Hi everyone, Helen Blunden here. Hope you're happy, healthy and well. It is time for a new life lesson learned from the books I read, and today I'd like to talk about yet another Anita Brookner's book. This is her 21st novel called The Next Big Thing, and she wrote this back in 2002. I bought it from a secondhand bookstore for a very cheap price. Anytime I see Anita Brookner, I'll buy her books. If you follow along on this channel, you probably already know that I've done a few of her other books already. I've done A Start in Life, Latecomers, A Hotel du Lac, and Look at Me. All of them very good. I love her books. She's my female crush. Now, when I opened this book, I was pleasantly surprised because it was a male character, and the books that I've reviewed so far have all had female characters. So it's quite a surprise to open it up and be introduced to Julian Hertz, and also him going through very similar emotions and similar experiences that all of Anita Brookner's female characters were going through in other books. So Julian Hertz is a middle-aged, very lonely man. He's divorced from his wife Josie, who they have a really good friendship even though they're divorced. And she too is also someone who I guess would say is lonely, but she still has a little bit of oomph about her. She still makes decisions for herself. She still carries on her life. And she also seems to be a little bit stronger in resolve than Julian. Julian to me seems a bit lost. He's a solitary man. He's a lonely man. He's someone who doesn't really understand his way in the world, and he doesn't understand what it's like to be a man nowadays. He feels as if he doesn't know how the young people operate anymore. He doesn't know the signals that he's supposed to send out anymore. He feels as if men need to be on their guard against their pure natural impulses, advances and gestures. He really doesn't know how to behave anymore. He seems lost. He seems lost in a world that has changed around him, that seems to move on, go on holidays, work, interact with other people, and he's by himself, still in the same life, with the same mindset, with the same memories, with the same experiences, and yet he also knows that he's someone who simply doesn't really want to engage in the world, but he also does at the same time. In effect, he's someone who is lost, and at times he feels quite disillusioned with the world and disillusioned about people and how they lack the loyalty anymore. Some of the examples I would say that in the book we see him going out and walking the streets and talking to people, talking to strangers, and wishing that they could open up and have a more of a conversation with him. But he knows and he can understand that kind of distance with strangers. Usually there is a point, you get to a point where you don't go further anymore, and he feels as if he kind of misses that connection. It was really interesting in that sense, because at the same week that I was reading this book, there was a news article where they were saying that the younger generation want for supermarkets to have specific times for older people to do their shopping. Now, this was something that was introduced during COVID, where some supermarkets had introduced a very early time for the older people to come to the shops and do their shopping. This way they allowed the staggering of the community to be able to come in and do their shops during COVID lockdowns. But this particular news article was talking about, in general, young people simply feel as if older people take up their time chit-chatting with cashiers and retail staff and supermarket staff. And I had to have a chuckle with that, because I thought, how as a society are we going down this track that everything seems to be so quick? People of a certain age are denied that opportunity to have that one-on-one human connection. It was very relevant to listen to that news story, and also to read this about a man trying to make sense of the world, to connect with other people in the world, to somehow find that youthful power that seems to have missed him. Now, in the book, we also learn about his upbringing, and his upbringing is very similar to the themes of other Anita Brookner novels where there are just, I guess, dysfunctional parents. In this particular novel, his father was a little bit disengaged from the family. He slept a lot. He wasn't really interested in the family life. Meanwhile, his mother was very showy and very interested in her son Freddie, who was the musical savant. The wonderful child who was musically talented, and everything was for Freddie. But as Freddie grew up, he started to oust his parents and he became estranged. And this really wrecked the relationship in the family to the point where Julian felt he had to be the go-between between his brother Freddie and his parents. So in effect, Freddie felt as if he hadn't grown up. He hadn't really come to his own life simply because he was dealing with and trying to help his parents deal with this issue or this problem. In so doing, he hadn't grown up to be an adult himself. He hadn't grown up to go through and experience life. He was someone who followed rules, and for anyone who follows rules, you don't really lend yourself to becoming, as Anita Brookner said, predisposed to reckless happiness. You just follow the rules, you do what is expected of you, you do what is expected of in society of you, and yet you don't push through and you don't achieve your dreams, and you don't really see through any of your desires and the longings that you have. And in the end, it's just a waste of energy. You simply think about these things and yet you never act upon them. And maybe this is something that I got out of life, that we could be in situations or relationships where we aren't valued to that point, where we aren't doing what we really want to do, but what we are expected to do. And in so doing, we're denying ourselves our own life, our own opportunity to get to know ourselves. There's a lot of quotes I wrote down in this book, and it was really interesting. He said here that desire and longing for someone without action is a disastrous waste of energy. Fulfillment was more important than anticipation. Also, that the ego seeks acknowledgement and his own will, which must be obeyed. He ended up respectable but not respected. And so it is a very interesting book about typical aspects of life, of themes all around loneliness, the desire for longing for a past life. It's about regret, especially when Julian finally decides to go on a holiday for himself and then wants to rent out his apartment, something which he hasn't done ever before. And it's all very freaky for him. And he meets Sonia, who is a young woman who wants the apartment, and he does something to her. He grabs something, which he himself is also shocked, and so is she. But it makes him think about his lost youth as well. There are themes of regret. There's themes of not taking action in our lives. There's themes of aging with dignity, the need for companionship in our older years, the need to realize the impact of what our parents do on our own lives and how their attitudes also affect us. There are themes of change and the fear of change. There are themes of connection. There's themes of basically being able to be our own person. So I felt this book was another good one by Anita Brookner. But the only thing I would say with this one is I would say that it was written a little bit differently to her previous novels. It took some time for me to read this because it was so dense. It's a lot deeper reading. The words that she uses are a lot more difficult as well. So it's not a read where you just whip through the book. I really took my time in reading the chapter because I had to really sit and think about the phrases that she used. They weren't as quick to jump to mind as well. They were a little bit deeper than her usual other books. For me, my biggest lesson here is, man, you've got to take risks. You've got to take risks. If something is affecting you in your life, make the first move, make the bold move, and just move. Take action. Do not settle, and do not fear or be impacted by the attitudes of others, least of all your parental attitudes or your family attitudes that also may set you back. Just as much as they might help build you up, just also be mindful that they could set you back in your own life too. All right then, that's The Next Big Thing by Anita Brookner. Thank you for listening and thank you for watching. Bye for now.